Well, then did you go on to school after you got out of high school, or did you?
Okay, so what happened then is that everybody applied to college. And I decided I would go ahead and apply to one. And one of my friends said, you should apply to two. Your school that you want and your safe school. I don't know if they even do that nowadays for colleges. But so I said, okay. And then I talked to my counselor, and my counselor knew what my academic career was, and he said, well, you need to apply to more schools because it's just wise. I mean, the nice thing about him was he didn't discourage me.
Right.
Once he heard which schools I was. So I applied to 8 State University of New York colleges. We called them SUNYs or SUNYs. Right. And at that time it was cheap. You could apply to like four of them for like $25. So I applied to 8 of them.
Okay.
So my high school counselor had asked me, well, how'd it go? Did you. He said, well, I didn't get accepted by any of the SUNY. Okay. And my dad tried to get me into a college, and he actually had it set so that I could have gone to a college, which was Union College, which was fairly well known in that time. And I think there was even a movie with Robert Redford, Barbara Streisand, that was on that campus. It was, I don't know, The Way We Were or something. But I had decided I would fly out of state because I wanted to get away from home, like most kids. So the 2 colleges that accepted me was my safe school and the one I really wanted to go to. And when I got accepted to that school, which was out of state, my dad was really, really, really complaining. Like, I can't believe he's going out of state. I worked so hard. I know people at Union College. I could have gotten him in. No big deal. And my friend said, well, where's your son going? And he would tell 2 or 3 people. Finally, his friend said, Jack, you should actually be very proud of your son. Georgetown is a very hard place to get into. And he got in.
Right.
And so my dad was quiet after that. So I got into Georgetown University in Washington.
Okay.
So I went to college there, but still not the best student. So same thing happened after about 2 years. The dean called me in and said, we're asking you to leave.
Okay.
Otherwise, what's that known as? I forgot now. It's you're kicked out of school.
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that. Well, it's like, I couldn't believe they did that. And I said, I'm not taking it. So what happened then is about 2 years later, I reapplied, and I had to face the dean again. And I told her, this is what I did. I wrote a superb essay, and they let me in.
Okay.
I didn't learn my lesson.
Oh, you didn't?
No. After about a year there, I realized Georgetown really was not the place. So I made the decision myself to say, okay, I'm going to leave Georgetown, which I did. And then the question was, well, where do I go? So I said, well, I had a friend in New York City. So I said, well, let me go to New York City. And that's where it was for a couple months in summer. And then I woke up like an August morning, go find a job. And so my friend told me, well, why don't you go to a restaurant in the theater district? You have a restaurant background, so go there. And I said, okay, what restaurant are you thinking? So, well, go to a restaurant. It's called Sardi's.
Okay.
And for anybody from in that time period that was in theater knew what it was. Sardi's was basically a Broadway actor, actress hangout place.
Okay.
And all the young kids were wannabes that wanted to be on Broadway. So they would get a job at Sardi's to try to meet, the actors, and you had the different people they're very well known. I remember I ran into, what was it, WKRP, Lonnie, something like that. And then a few other people, Yul Brenner, it's a whole bunch of people from that time. So I went down there and applied, and it was really busy, so it took me to go 2 or 3 times. And then finally I got to talk to the manager. His name was Doug Ricketts, and as we're walking up for him to interview me, he was asking me a couple questions, and I remember to this day, one of the questions is, do you know how to make steak tartare? Okay. Well, I'm just a kid. I don't know what steak. So I'm going like, how am I going to answer this one? So I said, well, you know, I've made it at home, but I've never made it in a restaurant. And he says, well, it's not really any different. You know, obviously there are a couple of things, but you know, you still have the steak, you have the Worcester sauce, and you named a few. I said, oh, okay, as long as it's not any different, yeah, I figure out what the other one. So we talked a bit, and he said, okay, you're hired, son. Come to work the next day. And I said, thanks. I walked out, and I knew right around the corner, literally was Barnes and Noble. So I went to Barnes and Noble, looked up a book recipe for steak tartare to see how you make it.
Okay.
So that's how I got into the restaurant business in New York City.
Okay. So that was your career at that point, and went.
Yeah, I was in New York City for about 10 years. I gradually moved into better and better restaurants, and then the last restaurant I worked in was Windows on the World restaurant, which was on top of the World Trade Center, floor 103, I think. And that was, I forgot, I think it was this. Again, my directions are wrong, it could have been the north. But that's one of the two towers that fell.
Okay.
And, but fortunately I had already left about 6 or 7. But that was my last restaurant job, was Windows on the World, and I was being trained to be a maitre d'. Now in New York City world, being a maitre d' in a very well-known restaurant is akin to being like a president of a section of a.
So making good money as a waiter or not?
I was, as a waiter I was, and then when I became a part-time maitre d', I was making on there. I'm trying to remember. I think back in the 1980s, I was probably making over 70 sometimes.
That's a lot of money then.
Yeah, I think in today's dollars that would be 140, 200.
Probably more than that.
But anyhow, I was.
But then the rent's a little higher in New York.
No, because it was rent control.
Oh.
Yeah, so I was living in a rent controlled place, thanks to my wife, for like $450.
Okay.
Time period, we thought that was
yeah.
Yeah, so anyhow, so we were in New York for about 10 years, and then we moved here to Colorado around, I think, 86, 87. And when I came here, I tried to work for restaurants. Nobody would hire me because they saw my resume, and all the restaurants would say, we're not hiring you because they'll fire me. You know, the managers that interviewed me, because I knew far more.
Okay.
So I finally got a job, and it was actually like a double trio. And the guy I looked at goes like, you know, if I hire you, I'm gonna be out of the job. I go, look, I need it. And it was only for like, I think what, $13,000, which was considerably less. I said, look, all I need to know is what do you want to accomplish, and then whenever, just let me do whatever it needs to make it look good. And when people say, what are you doing? I'll just say, my F&B, food and beverage director, told me to do this. I'll give you credit, I just need it. So one of the things that he was told that he had to do was build up the nightclub, because at that time the nightclub was make 24 people for the whole weekend. So he goes, what the heck am I gonna do? I go, well, what do you need? It was like, I gotta get it up to about 40 or 50 people for the whole weekend. I said, okay, don't worry, I got it. You just gotta pretend you're walking around watching. So I got it up to basically about 200 a night for each one. So he was successful, but then he stopped showing up for work, and they figured it out and they fired him. So I applied for his job, and they told me that I was not qualified. I had difficulties working with structure, is what I'll say. The next place that would take me, which was a big pay rate, was 18,000.
Okay.
So it's like, okay, I guess I'm going to Denny's, because that's where they paid the most. And the same situation, I worked everything, blah, blah, blah. They were looking for, they didn't hire me. They took one of the waitresses that I trained and made her the assistant manager and knew nothing. So, and I knew that person would be gone in a short period of time. I finally got got a job as a food and beverage manager in a hotel right off of Arapahoe Road in 25. Again, my personality was not good. They told me, you need to do this, this, and this, and I said, no, I refuse that. And they said, why? I said, if you have me do this, this, and this, in 6 months, this place will close. And they go, but this is what we want you to do. And I said, no. And they showed me the door. And out of curiosity, I looked about 6 months later, and I think it was really more 8 or 9 months. The hotel closed and everything. Then I went to a banquet manager at like a Hilton or something. I had issues with there. I cut off one of the patrons at a party because they were drunk. They go, you can't do that. Liability laws, I'm doing the right thing. They go, yeah, but the guy you cut off was the one paying for the whole party.
Yeah.
So we're letting you go. That's when I said, I think I need to find a new job. And so somebody else said, you might be good as a real estate agent. I said, I don't have much of a choice, do I?
Okay.
So that's how I started. In 1990, I got my license as a real estate agent, and now it's 2023 going into 24. I'm still a real estate agent, and the only person that fires me now is me in the morning sometimes. Like, okay, I'm not working today.
Well, you have a choice.
Yeah, so.
But hunger will get you moving at some point.
It will, yeah. Just through grit and doing a lot of research, learning and taking a lot of classes and paying for a lot of courses and listening. Pretty much almost every year I've been either in the top 10% of the company or the top one. I think I've done okay.
Yeah. Have you had fun at it?
I have. The first 5 years was pretty interesting. You woke up every morning wondering, why am I doing this? Am I going to make it or survive? I mean, literally, I still remember the association. Every Thanksgiving, they would have what they call a turkey, whoever would get the turkey, and they would go ahead and hand the turkey over to the next person. And when they said stop or whatever, whoever held the turkey would get the turkey as from the association. So for 2 years, I made sure I always got them.
Oh, okay.
That's how I fed my family at Thanksgiving. And people all kept always saying like, "Oh, you're so lucky." I go, "Yeah, I guess so." And when you gotta eat, you gotta eat.
Well, as I recall, there's also a story about how when you were starting in real estate, you had to make your clients drive you around too.
Yeah, because my car broke down. I had a it was not the best car. That's the only way I could say it. So yeah, I had a few bumps in the road.
Yeah, but you made it all work.
Yeah, like I said, those first 5 years was pretty interesting on that. But I had people that helped me. I had a couple, and just recently the gentleman passed away. He was in his 90s. He was in one of the first offices I was in real estate, and I didn't know it too much at that time. He had started maybe like 3 months before me. But what caught me was when he introduced himself. I said, "So how long are you in this business?" He says, "Oh, we just came in here about 4 or 5 months ago, but in 5 years we'll be retiring." And I'm going like, "That's great. Real estate, and you can make that much money that you can retire in 5 years." So I said, "Hey, let's see what happens." I was almost out of the business in 90. And if it hadn't been for him, I was living on credit card. But if it hadn't been for him paying for a real estate course for me to attend, which was about $650, and in today's dollars, that would be about $1,500. I would not have made it, move out of state. But because, he was so kind to pay my tuition, I actually got some real training. Because back then, literally, it was, okay, here's a desk, here's a phone, here's the yellow pages or the white pages, start making calls. But no scripts, no nothing.
Right.
On that. The amount of training people get today is far different than people did. I literally came from the time period where we had fax papers that curled up And when we said cut and paste, it was literally with scissors and tape and glue. In fact, my first CMA covered this table, which looks like it's about, I don't know, 4x4. I didn't know what I was doing. I took a whole bunch of 8.5 by 11 pieces of copy paper, taped it all together to show plat maps, to show where everything was. Went to my first appointment, laid it out on the person's table, and just started talking. And they go, "Okay, looks like you know what you're doing. You're hired." And I put it on the market. It was back to, I think it was Peoria, which was a busy, and all the agents said, "You're way overpriced," and that was like $64,000. You'll never get it sold, and I got it sold. That was my first deal.
Well,
pretty interesting.
Take after your dad. Go figure out what it takes to get it done.
Yeah,
that's the story, isn't it?
Always is. Always is.
It never changes, does it?
Yeah, and so that's why I think, you know, if you want to get ahead at work or do something, you just do what you can, and then you sort of figure it out as you go. At some point you can say, I had this big plan, but you got to figure it out.
Well, the way I described it, when I was 17, I knew how it was all going to unfold, and at 77, I'm not so sure. A lot of things are different than what I thought they were going to be then.
Yeah, exactly.
Is where it is.
Yeah.
Bill, I appreciate your sharing. I think.
I think we need to call it quits. So thanks so much.
You had enough for today?
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate the time. Appreciate the insight.
Yeah.
So you've got a video to.
Let's hope it recorded right, because I'm still trying to learn all this electronics.
Well, with some luck, mine will work, and I can email it to you, and you can do what you want with it.
Sounds good. Thanks, Don.
You're welcome.